Good morning, and welcome to Tea with the Druid. This is episode 108. And it's nice and early here in Sydney. Good morning from Germany. Welcome, Daniel. It's 7 o'clock here, and it's been a really interesting time for me living in Australia. Welcome, Linda. It's great to see some familiar faces, 80. Before I get started, though, something that we do here in Australia before any gathering, whether it's a personal one in our own private practice or as a gathering of many peoples, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. And I, here in Sydney, in the southwestern inner suburbs of Sydney, live on the Gadigal land. And the Gadigal land stretches from Port Jackson down through to the Cooks River, and they're part of the Eora tribe, so the Eora Nation. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the ancestors of the past and the trauma they underwent at the hands of colonisation. And I'd also like to acknowledge the ancestors of the present and the trauma they carry with the dispossession of the land. But I also like to acknowledge the ancestors emerging and the important work that we all have to do to heal the land and acknowledge that this is Aboriginal land. It always has been and it always will be. So thanks for joining. It's been, as I mentioned, a really challenging time for I think everybody globally, but here in Australia we're witnessing on a daily, hourly, by minute basis just the depths of compassion, of gratitude, and grief that we all feel at a time like this, when we experience something that we're familiar with. Fire is something that's always been part of the Australian landscape. It's something that's always been here at this time of year. But what we're witnessing and what some of us are experiencing firsthand is something beyond anything that we've lived through in our lifetimes, and certainly what we're experiencing is deeply concerning. It's as I mentioned, something that isn't new, but it's something on a level that hasn't been experienced before. And as someone living in an urban environment, I'm not directly affected by fire. What I am affected by are the ash and the smoke that from those fires coalesce and condense into these urban environments, and really really makes a struggle to just go about our daily life without bearing witness to just the enormity of the tragedy unfolding all around us, and being drawn into that trauma that is the difficulty that those people must be experiencing on those front lines. We've got across the country mobilised resources, rural fire services spreading out throughout the eastern seaboard in particular, and their level of commitment and dedication has just been unprecedented. I think that the enormity of what we're seeing and the enormity of the depth of our grief and trauma is really just consolidating that focus of will and intention and compassion, and allowing people to, in spite of holding that grief and living with that grief, be able to take it and turn it into something really powerful and transformative, healing. Welcome to everybody coming in. I see there's a number of people. Welcome, Julianne, California. Andre from the Netherlands. welcome. So for me, as an urban druid, I sit with this grief in a very different way because, as I mentioned, I'm not living on the front line, but instead, what I'm struggling with is the compassion for the land that I have such a deep connection to. The way I connect with that land, and how do I take that feeling of grief? How do I work that desire for deep compassion into something meaningful that's going to help those who need it the most, or heal the land in areas that need it the most, and also witness within me what this means for my druidry in the future. How do I continue this practice? Is there something that I need to look at inside me and understand? Hi, Chris, how are you? So I think, as someone like many of you do, walking the wheel, we often drop in and out of that deep witnessing process, and when we do that while we're holding grief for the land, it's something that's potentially quite traumatic. It can be something that's quite difficult to process at the time. Often it results in a lot of anger. It's hard not to separate the experience of what we're going through, regardless of whether we're experiencing directly or symptomatically, that feeling of deep anger for inaction by those who have the authority to do that and to bring about change. But at the same time, it also helps us understand and work through some of the ways that we might be able to transform that grief and transform those feelings of helplessness into something that's really quite positive, healing, and peaceful, and an expression of love, a deep expression of love for the land. So I think that one of the things that is really important when wrestling with grief is actually being mindful of what that means to sit with that grief, because when what we're witnessing potentially is something that is going to become normal, and that terrifies me. I recognise that being in a place like Australia, the land and the animals have evolved with fire, and will continue to evolve with the landscape. And that's quite a challenging concept for me in some ways, because I see the things that I love so dearly, and those places I love to visit and to feel not just connected with, but healed by, and to see them in crisis and to see them in stress, and to think that it will take generations to recover from this, is really challenging for me. But as part of that resting with that grief and that deep witnessing and mindfulness of what that means for the landscape, and being present, just really present in that moment, helps me not just witness, but also transform that grief through my love for it into something meaningful, something that I can feel somewhat restored by, because I know that even though in my lifetime I will need to bear witness to this struggle and bear witness to the trauma and have to work with that process of healing, that what I'll be contributing to is something that in hopefully generations to come will adapt, will be restored, and will continue to be transformed by these natural processes in a more healing way. Because right now, what we're not seeing is enough change on those fronts where these situations are being made worse. So one of the biggest criticisms coming out of Australia right now is our lack of leadership, um, and commitment to acknowledging the causes of this deep trauma that we're witnessing. Because it's not just as a Druid that I'm feeling this. Everybody has been motivated. Just on the weekend, actually, I even went to a fundraiser that was organised by drag queens, and every cent raised went to the Royal Fire Service. Every member of our community, every member of the Australian community and globally, they are in solidarity, supported and motivated by these just inexplicable um, events that are unfolding. These, like I said, happen, but they're happening on a scale that we haven't seen before, and it's really beautiful to see all levels of the community come together. And because of this, we're starting to see cracks in the in the bureaucracy. We're starting to see cracks in a way of thinking which has held us back from really transforming our policies on climate. And this has been the direct result of the power of community and the solidarity of our resolve to address these issues. But as Druids, it's something that we need to perhaps even look at on a deeper spiritual level too. I certainly know with my practice as an urban Druid, I live as I said, in Sydney, and I'm surrounded by several parks, and I spend most of my time in a mindful practice of walking through those parks, connecting with those places. But I also then radiate further out and around Sydney and draw that energy back in. And what that helps do is what I was just describing. It helps bring into alignment all those different parts to really bring about change. And as a Druid, to do that as a practice helps me work from the confines of where I am, but also connect outwardly with those beautiful places around me. Hello, Catherine from sunny Florida. But what in this search for meaning and ways of exploring grief as an expression of my druidry, but through mindful grieving, I discovered Dr. Samrit Kumar, and who wrote a book about mindful grieving, and I found that so incredibly helpful, because what it talks about, there's a number of things that I found really useful in it. But when we talk about our grief for the land, or when I talk about my grief for the land, what a phrase that he used was, the grief originates from our loss to nurture nature, or to nurture life, and that relationship, that desire, that grief that comes from the loss to nurture life, comes from our love of it. And it was such a potent idea, this idea of love and grief being one and the same. And when we grieve, we don't always grieve because we have lost something we love. We grieve because we're in love with what we're grieving for. We're in love with it. We want to nurture it. We want to restore it. So it was a really powerful idea, and what it showed me was just how restorative, being mindful in my grief, I was able to use that relationship with love to restore the balance within me, and to restore that in that moment, my ability to act. Because often in these moments of deep sadness, I'm kind of overwhelmed. What can I do? And how do I rest in this mindful place to be able to transform it into something that will allow me to not only make a change on the physical level, but make a change on the spiritual one. One of my favourite cups. This actually, I don't know if you can see it very well. It's got an etching of an elk or a deer skull from the dear Evelyn in South Australia. Hello, Evelyn. And so what I thought would be really valuable was as part of this idea of mindfulness in grief and mindfulness of just the trauma that we're seeing across the globe, but also here specifically in Australia, how we might be able to bring into balance perhaps our understanding of that grief and its relationship with love. Also remembering that here in Australia, the landscape does have a relationship with fire. And I'm not even contemplating right now just how many extinction events we've witnessed as a result of this traumatic event, but instead trying to focus on the restorative and the transforming power that fire can have, and trying to bring that back into balance of the grief for the loss, and then try and turn that into something positive, trying to turn it into something that I can use both physically and spiritually in my practice. I think that one of the things with that idea of where our practice intersects with what's happening in our environment, we talk about in druidry, we have the wheel of the year, which a lot of us walk, and those are the 8 major festivals, and they're containers for specific power, for specific intention, and they're wonderful for providing that structure, that outer structure. But here in Australia, we wrap that around a changing landscape, which is opportunistic. It has these damaging yet restorative relationships with fire, with water. It's animals, the animals that live here that we share this place with, have learned to adapt to. And that in itself, where that intersects, where those things come together, is within me as a druid, within us as druids. It's where those things come together, and it's in that point. It's at that point where we're able to use our practice to try and focus that transformative power that comes from acknowledging the grief, but also the love and our desire to nurture life. That even in events like this, tragic events like this, we still have that ability to find a natural place for our grief, in that moment, in that present moment, in that mindful state. So what I will do now, I've been talking for a while, and my goodness, does the time fly. What I thought we'll do, is just have a brief meditation now. What I'd like to do is just invite you now with me to take a breath. With the land beneath us. Take another breath. And now give a breath for the sky above us. And now take a breath. And give a breath for the sea all around us. And may the blessings of land, sea and sky invite you now to get comfortable. And if you like, close your eyes. I'll be opening my eyes periodically to check on time, but I invite you now to just gently close your eyes, remain comfortable. And imagine yourself safely in somewhere that you're familiar, a beautiful outdoor setting. Perhaps it's a forest, perhaps it's your local park, but this place is familiar to you. This place brings you joy. Every time you visit it, you always smell the seasons changing, and you might smell at the moment the frost on the trees, or perhaps the rain on the grass. But I invite you now to take a moment, just breathe into this place, this safe and comforting place. Perhaps you can hear birds or small animals, maybe dogs. Your park might be near a busy road. Just let those sounds in. Let them in. They're part of this environment, but you're safe. And with the breath, just allow the breath to sink into your chest and deep into your abdomen. And send it down into the earth. Past the grass, the soil, past the tree roots, anchoring you safely in the earth. Perhaps the heartbeat of the earth is subtle, quiet, restful. Perhaps it's vital with life, awakened by the sun. But I invite you now to draw up that energy past the tree roots, past the soil and the grass, the ground beneath your feet, and draw it up through your legs and up into your heart. Draw it up and feel it warm, your chest. And now with the breath, I invite you now to send your consciousness up. Send it up into the sky. Perhaps the air is cool. Perhaps it's filled with light, or it might be even dark, but send it up into the sky. Past the clouds and into the stars. The bright energy of the sky and the stars, the universe, pouring into you now. Pouring into you through the sky, through the air around you, into your skull. Feel it swirling around in your body as it meets the energy of the earth, mixing with the energy of the earth as it slowly fills your chest, fills your shoulders, down into your abdomen, your legs, your arms, and your head. And just feel for a moment present, mindful of this place, this safe and comforting place. This place brings you peace. this is a place you have a connection and a sense of purpose, a place where you can nurture life. Connected with the earth below us, the sky above us. May you find in the deep, still center of your being peace. And gently, throughout the greater circle of humankind, may you radiate that peace. Perhaps you'd like to touch the ground and feel that peace within you, radiate across the land, across the oceans, and across all the lands. Feeling it healing, powerful, restorative peace. When you're ready, to stand up again. And holding onto that peace with a breath, I invite you now to open your eyes when you're ready. This place, these places we visit, this is where we can hopefully hold that peace and send that peace out to the places that need it the most. I think one thing that is really important to remember that at times like this, change can sometimes be inevitable, and what we witness, deep witness, with the land, is that the land will adapt, the land will change, and the land will resurge and restore. It's in our grief we mourn the loss. We in our love for nurturing life, what is lost. But keeping the knowledge and holding the knowledge that life can be restored, that in response to the grief of the land comes hope. I in solidarity with all of you, want to share this idea that in these sacred places that we have, we can share that message of hope, we can share that message of peace, and hopefully share that love we have for nurturing life. And may that give us solace, and in that mindful moment, restore the love from the grief we hold. So again, thank you all for joining me. This has gone by incredibly quickly. So much more to say, and I hope that I get a chance to read your comments later. And thank you all for joining me. Have a wonderful day. And to all those who have contributed, both financially, spiritually, personally, the gratitude on the ground is immense. And for those of us who are living with this, I send you my deepest sympathies, my love, and I wish everybody a safe day, and perhaps a good night. Thank you.